400 million people. That's more than the entire population of the United States, living downstream of a single structure. And in the summer of 2020, engineers were watching it very carefully. Water levels were rising faster than anyone had predicted. Cracks were being reported. And on state-run Chinese media, which almost never admits anything negative, the words displacement, seepage, and deformation appeared in an official report about the dam. Let that sink in. The world's largest dam, officially described as deforming. So today we're going to answer the question that governments don't really want you asking. What actually happens if the Three Gorges Dam collapses? Not theory, not conspiracy. Real data, real simulations, real consequences. Stay with me, because the last part of this video will genuinely surprise you. Before we get into the collapse scenario, you need to understand what we're actually dealing with here, because most people massively underestimate this structure. The Three Gorges Dam sits on the Yangtze River in Hubei Province, China. Construction started in 1994, it was finished in 2006, and when it became fully operational in 2012, it broke basically every record in the book. It is 185 meters tall. That's roughly 60 stories. It stretches 2,309 meters across. That's almost 1.5 miles of pure concrete and steel. Behind it sits a reservoir 660 kilometers long. For reference, that's longer than the distance from London to Edinburgh. And the water it holds, 40 cubic kilometers, 10 trillion gallons, stored 175 meters above sea level. Now here's the thing that blew my mind when I first read it. NASA actually confirmed that filling this reservoir changed Earth's rotation. The redistribution of that much mass, that high up, added 0.06 microseconds to our day, and physically shifted Earth's poles by about 2 centimeters. Changed the spin of the planet. So when we talk about what happens if this thing fails, we're not talking about a broken pipe. We're talking about one of the most consequential engineering structures ever built by human hands, failing catastrophically. Okay, let's run the scenario. It's flood season, June or July. The reservoir is at or near maximum capacity. A combination of record rainfall and seismic activity triggers a structural failure. The dam breaks. In the first 30 minutes, Yichang is gone. The city of Yichang sits just 50 kilometers downstream. A wall of water, estimated at close to 100 meters high at the point of breach, would move at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour through the narrow gorge. The terrain on both sides acts like a funnel, concentrating the force rather than dispersing it. Yichang has a population of over 4 million people. Emergency services would have minutes, not hours, minutes. Gajuba Dam, which sits between the Three Gorges and Yichang, would be hit first. It would not survive. By the 1-hour mark, that wall of water, now slightly slower but still catastrophic, begins spreading across the Yangtze Plain. This is some of the most densely populated agricultural land on Earth. Towns, farms, roads, just gone. And this isn't speculation. In 2020, a Chinese financial news site called Beijing Lengyan actually released a computer simulation of exactly this scenario. It went viral, almost immediately. The Chinese government had it taken down, but not before millions of people had already seen it. Why would they take it down? That's a question worth sitting with. The simulation data gives us a rough timeline of what follows. Around 5 hours after collapse, floodwaters reach Yuyang, approximately 350 kilometers downstream. Estimates suggest the city gets hit with 5 meters of water. Dongting Lake nearby absorbs some of it, but not enough to stop the destruction. By hour 10, Wuhan. Now, Wuhan sits roughly 700 kilometers from the dam. It has 11 million people. The simulation predicts floodwaters arriving at around 7 meters in height, with some districts submerged under 5 meters of water. And it doesn't stop there. The Yangtze doesn't stop at Wuhan. Further downstream, Nanjing, 8 million people. Then the water moves toward the Yangtze Delta, one of China's most economically critical regions, before eventually reaching Shanghai. Now, to be fair, by the time water travels that far, it would be significantly reduced in speed and height. Natural lakes, tributaries, and the sheer distance would dissipate a lot of the initial force. Shanghai would face severe flooding, not a 100-meter wall. But here's what the raw numbers tell us. The Chinese government's own risk assessments acknowledge that a catastrophic dam failure on the Yangtze could directly endanger between 300 to 400 million people. That is not a typo. 300 to 400 million human beings living in the flood path of a single structure. Now here's where I want to slow down, because I'm not here to just scare you. I want to give you the full picture. Is the Three Gorges Dam actually in danger of collapsing? The honest answer is, officially, no. Chinese engineers and the Three Gorges Corporation maintain that the dam is structurally sound and within all design tolerances. But there are legitimate concerns that serious engineers, not conspiracy theorists, have raised for years. First, sediment. The Yangtze carries enormous amounts of silt. Over decades, that sediment builds up behind the dam, reducing its water storage capacity and increasing pressure on the structure. Engineers knew this was a risk when they built it. Whether the mitigation measures are working as designed is debated. Second, seismicity. The weight of 40 cubic kilometers of water pressing on the earth beneath it. This phenomenon, called reservoir-triggered seismicity, has been documented at large dams around the world. Since the reservoir filled, the Three Gorges region has recorded a noticeable increase in minor earthquakes and landslides. In December 2024, a landslide near the reservoir, 800,000 cubic meters of rock, was captured on video and shared globally. It was one of several that year. Third, and perhaps most importantly, transparency. When state media uses words like deformation and seepage in an official document, then walks it back by saying it's all part of the elastic design, that's not reassuring. That's the kind of language that makes engineers and journalists pay very close attention. The dam was designed to withstand a 1 in 10,000-year flood event. In 2020, they came uncomfortably close to testing that claim. Let's zoom out even further, because the consequences of a Three Gorges Dam collapse would not stop at China's borders. The Yangtze River basin generates roughly 20% of China's entire GDP. The factories, ports, and agricultural land in that region supply global supply chains for electronics, textiles, and food. The dam itself currently supplies around 1% of China's electricity, which doesn't sound like much until you realize China's grid is enormous, and that 1% powers tens of millions of homes. A collapse would trigger an immediate energy crisis, an economic shock felt in every country that trades with China, which is basically every country on Earth, and a humanitarian disaster that would strain international aid systems to their absolute limits. The global response would need to be unlike anything we've ever organized. And this is why the Three Gorges Dam isn't just China's problem. It never was. It was always a global risk, sitting behind a concrete wall on a river in central China. So here's where I'm going to leave you, and I genuinely want to know what you think. The Three Gorges Dam is not showing signs of imminent collapse. Engineers will tell you that, and I believe them. But here's the question that keeps coming back to me, and I haven't found a satisfying answer to yet. If the dam is completely safe, why did China remove that collapse simulation video so quickly? Governments take down misinformation all the time, but they also suppress information that creates inconvenient public panic. And sometimes, those two things look identical from the outside. Now there's something else I haven't mentioned yet. Something that happened very recently, in 2026, that scientists are calling a wake-up call about what massive water storage does to the planet long-term. It's connected to the Three Gorges Dam, and it changes how you might think about mega-engineering projects like this one entirely. I'm covering that in the next video. But before I go, I want to ask you something directly. Do you think China is being fully transparent about the condition of this dam? Or is there something they're not telling us? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you think someone you know should be asking this question, share this video with them.